Welcome to Leadership Moments.
In every great leader's life, there are pivotal moments that shape their character, test their resilience, and awaken their vision.
Together, we'll uncover the invaluable lessons hidden within these transformative moments. Today, our guest is Lanse LaVoy. Lanse is a senior information technology leader who enjoys learning and leading in dynamic, fast-paced environments where teams are empowered to get things done. Lanse spans a 25-year-plus career where he has served in a variety of information technology leadership roles, focused on application delivery, operations, and cybersecurity. Originally from southeastern Michigan, Lanse has also had the opportunity to lead diverse teams and travel the world as a member of the United States Air Force and Air National Guard. He retired in 2023 as the Deputy Commander of the 110th Wing in Battle Creek, Michigan, after more than 36 years of service. In addition to his current leadership position, he is currently an executive coach focused on veteran leaders and the veteran leadership community. Today, we're going to talk about how leaders can help veterans thrive in a civilian organization. Let's dive in. Lanse, so excited that you joined us today on this special day. We're going to actually release this on Veterans Day, but this is an important topic that you and I have talked about, and I know that you are passionate about as well. And I'd love to just start off with you describing your background and your experience in supporting veterans in the workplace and why it's so important.
Well, thanks, Stacy. I'm glad to be here. Appreciate the opportunity to talk about it, especially since it's being released on Veterans Day. And it is an important topic. I totally agree. So my background, I spent a little over 36 years in the Air Force, either on active duty or in the Air National Guard as a reservist. It kind of bounced back and forth from during the latter part of my career, from like a civilian career and then to the military and back and forth quite often over the course of like the last 10, 15 years. And, there were bumps along the way, right? So, and as those bumps occurred, I tried to put a little like memory jogger about, well, maybe I don't want to do that again. Even going all the way back to my first transition when I left active duty the first time and got my first civilian job. There's just things that you don't know as a military person when you're coming out of the military into the civilian employment world. And I learned those things, and having learned some of those lessons, I really think it's important to pass it on and pay it forward so that other veterans don't have to learn the same things I did in the same way.
Yeah. And I think this is so important. So first, I want to pause and say thank you for your service. Really appreciate everything that you've done for our country. So thank you. And second, as a leader, I have led veterans before. And there are things that I think you're probably going to bring up today that like I just assumed that they would know, and they don't always know. And so that's why I like this topic, for you to be able to talk about it. So one, for our leaders out there, as you're leading these veterans, how do you show up and help them be successful? So I think those are something important for us to think about. And as veterans, maybe we'll get some nuggets there of, wow, it isn't the same. It is different, and some things to really know about. But what do you see as some of the biggest challenges veterans face when they start transitioning to civilian employment?
It all depends. So like not all veterans are created equal, because it depends on where they're coming from. They may be, I did a 4-year enlistment or officer time. I'm transitioning into some reservist time and I'm leaving active duty. Could be, I've spent 22 years in the military and I'm retiring. So I'm leaving the military and getting ready to move on to my next career. Or it could be kind of like what I did, which was like leaving active duty and going into a reserve component and starting a civilian career at the same time. So it's really even simple things like knowing what you're worth in the marketplace when you're looking to find a job and understand what kind of a salary makes sense. It seems simple, but it's not, because like as someone hiring a veteran, I know what you made all I have to do is go online and look up the pay chart, figure out what rank you were, how long you've been in, and I can see exactly what your pay scale is, but it's not equivalent to what you should be making in the civilian sector, right? So like really doing the research to understand like, yeah, I got paid this much, but I really should be getting paid this much when I transition into that civilian sector. Things like benefits, right? Like, oh, I actually have to go in and pick a healthcare plan, a dental plan, a vision plan, maybe some life insurance. Like those things just happen for you when you're on active duty, right? You get TRICARE and you get the Servicemen's Group Life Insurance, and you don't have to think about those things and the implications of them relative to like, oh, well, yeah, my salary is this, but this much is coming out to pay for my benefits because they're virtually free when it comes to, the military, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That was a long ramble, but there's a lot in there to unpack, right? So,
yeah, no, that's great. And it is a lot. It's things that, and those are examples of, yeah, I didn't even think about that. You have to think about choosing your healthcare, where that would be like something that I would just assume you would know to do, but you do have to walk people through that and just making sure you're pausing as a leader to say, do you know the steps, right? When we think about someone fresh out of college or an intern, I think we know to pause and teach those things. But when it's somebody coming out of the military and they're older, we don't really realize that sometimes. And so what I'd like to talk about is maybe as a leader, if I'm bringing in a veteran, what are some things, if maybe talk about with teaching processes or skills or getting them integrated into the team? Is there any tips and tricks that you'd like to add there that could be a challenge for someone newly coming into the civilian employment?
I think so. As a leader, if you're hiring a veteran, right, it's really think priority one, job one should really be have a discussion with them and understand like where they're coming from, right? Like what is their background? What unique skill sets are they bringing to the company based on their military experience, and really kind of open that door for them to ask the questions. Like no questions, not a good question. Like think through like what are those questions that they might have, and then help to find those answers for them. Get them a battle buddy, right? Find another veteran within your organization, either a peer or another leader that has more experience to help partner with them so that they really, if they don't feel comfortable asking their leader the questions, they have a venue to ask the questions because they'll have them. And if they don't ask them, then they won't get answers and they'll be frustrated, right? So,
yeah. Yeah, those are really good. I like that. And I think about finding other people. What have you found within other organizations with having, we call them employee resource networks or team member resource networks? Have you found anything like that to be helpful, or any other types of things that organizations and leaders should think about maybe creating? I love the buddy part, but is there anything else beyond that?
well, I think you mentioned a good one, that the team member resource network. So like a place where veterans can join and interact with other veterans and pose questions, or even, in a lot of places, they open it up to spouses or others that may even, like, they're not a veteran, but they want to help veterans. So they join that resource group to answer questions or generate dialogue. I think those need to be voluntary, though, because you will find, this is another thing for folks to think about. You will find folks that they're proud about their service, but they really, they want to take a break for a minute, and they may not want to be a part of that affinity group for a little while. So they're onto a new phase of their life, and they've made a deliberate decision to move on to that new phase. So like I said before, you really got to meet the veterans, the people, like where they're coming from, because you really don't know until you ask them.
That is such a great point that I wouldn't even have thought about either. Like, I think, oh, let's get you to this group, let's get you integrated. But you're right, they might need that break. And I love the idea of it might be a spouse of someone that's serving, or a child, like who knows, right? Depending on where they're at. But those are some really good points to think about too. And so,
and having that place where people can be safe and ask questions, because things will come up from like, hey, my son/daughter just left for basic training at such and such a place. Should I be worried? Or, what should I be thinking about to help support them? Like, even for that next generation that's coming up, which other people can weigh in, like, oh yeah, I was there and I went through there, blah, blah, blah. They'll be fine, helping to assure the folks that, yeah, it will be fine. And, and there's a big network here to help support you.
That's a really good point. It's a really good point. Now, you have had personal experience of working, actually leading large teams, going back into duty for a little while and then coming back again. So going back and forth. What are some strategies for leaders to support people like you that are going back and forth?
There's a couple things that come to mind, right? I mean, one of them, Stacy, is like, first and foremost, like as a company, making sure that the company understands the laws and the rules, right? Like, because there are very specific things that are afforded to folks that are making that transition back and forth. I have an example of the last time I was on active duty. I hired someone to go on active duty for 3 years overseas, and they called me like 2 days before they were supposed to accept the offer. And they said, hey, sir, like I can't do it. I said, well, okay, but tell me more. Why not? And they said, well, I went to my HR department and they told me I couldn't be gone for 3 years. I could only be gone for 1, and that my pension would not accrue while I was gone. I said, well, that's nice to know. So here's the 800 number. Call this number and talk to the folks on the other end of that line. And 2 days later, he called me back. He's like, sir, I'm going, because the HR department, I'm not calling them out, they were misinformed, right? They didn't understand the way those transitions work. So circling all the way back around, long answer to a short question, is really get educated, if not as a leader, but make sure, check in with your HR department to make sure that they understand what's happening. And then helping your team members to understand that, like, oh, because a lot of companies offer things like, extra paid time off for military duty, or pay differential to pay you the difference between what the military pays you and what your civilian employer pays you for some period of time. So really understanding that. And then I think as the reservist, right, like we owe it to our employer and our leader to best prepare them for the best that we can as we're leaving for some amount of time, right? Making sure that the things that we're working on have someone to cover them, making sure that whoever we've kind of designated as the fill-in for us is tracking on what needs to be done, and really build as robust of a plan as possible, especially as a leader. If you're a leader of leaders and you're doing this, there's another leader above you that's expecting things to keep moving while you're away.
Yeah, those are really good points. And, I think one thing is when that person has to go, they have to go. And what you transition that stuff as much as you can, but we figure it out. The rest of the team picks up those pieces as they need to when they go. And I think what's important is when they come back, maybe some tips and tricks of how to get them back up to speed. Because if somebody's really gone for 3 years or even a year, that's a long time. And what are some strategies for leaders to help get them back up to speed, feeling comfortable again, being back into the swing of things, doing either a similar role or the same role that they were before?
There's a couple things. So, like, first and foremost, the analogy I always use is like switching back and forth is kind of like if you watched any old soap operas, right? Like, you could tune in 6 months later and not that much would have changed. So you expect a lot to happen while you're away. Some things change, some things don't, and a lot of things are the same. And I think part of one of the strategies that can be used for people when they come back is really like give them a little bit of space. So give them 3 weeks, 4 weeks, just like, hey, go meet with people, rebuild those relationships, understand what's changed in the course of the time that you were gone. And of course, to your point, this would vary depending on the length of time, right? If you're gone for 2 weeks, you really don't need that. But if you're gone for a year, 2 years, 3 years, like really, because the company will have changed, making sure that, and people that were there when you left are gone, or they're in different roles. And the person that you're expecting to be in a particular role is now in a different role, and there's a new person there. So really affording those team members as they transition back the opportunity to, get reacclimated for some amount of time before they get thrown back into, the daily work. If you can possibly afford to do that as a leader, it'll pay huge dividends for the person and for you.
So what do you recommend for leaders to maybe better support the veteran team members? Anything we haven't touched upon yet?
I think it always goes back to we've touched on it loosely, right? But it's really like trying to figure out how to build that community within your company of support for veterans and their unique needs, right? And that's building, even if it's a leadership group of peer leaders, understanding does your company have a lot of companies have internal hiring practices that are focused on veterans because they want to bring veterans into the workplace because they know the skills that they bring, or the leadership skills, and or whatever skills they learned in the military. But it's really, I'd say, first and foremost, you really got to build that community of support for the veterans so that they feel supported, which then, this is kind of human nature, right? If they feel supported in the environment that they're in, they're going to stick around. So that, building something that causes them to want to stay with you and retain that talent within your organization, which then will lead to them telling their friends, like, hey, this is a great place to work. If you're a veteran, maybe you want to come work here, right? And it will continue to pay dividends for you as a leadership community within your company.
Love that. Love that. Are there organizations that leaders can lean upon, any named ones? We could put some in the show notes too, but any ones that you want to name out right now?
There are some. There's one that it used to be called American Corporate Partners. Now they just go by ACP, and there's an opportunity for leaders. So if you're a leader out there and you want to volunteer to help veterans, you can sign up to be a mentor as part of this organization. And what they will do then is, based on your skill and background, they'll partner you with what they call them proteges, which is going to be either a military spouse or a military member that's transitioning. They're either retiring, they're separating, and they give you about a year of interacting with this person. So you end up spending time with them over the course of a year, a couple hours a month, and helping them with things as simple, it would seem simple to us, but it's not, of like, hey, those words that you have on your resume, no one's going to understand them. So change those words, right? Like, here's places where you can go look at salary recommendations. Here's things that you should be thinking about as you're transitioning, even things like, here's how 401ks work. Here's how, restricted stock units work. Just having those dialogues with people and helping them make that transition over the course of a year. SkillBridge is another one. So if your company doesn't have a relationship with SkillBridge, it's one that you can form, and they will actually place separating and retiring military members inside your company to work for 4 to 6 months while they're still on active duty, so that it's an opportunity for them to get to know you and you to get to know them before. Hiring Our Heroes is another one. And there's so many. I mean, when you look at, community-based organizations like the American Legion or the VFW, as well as things at every state. So every state has different programs that are looking to assist veterans as they make those transitions. Tons of them.
Yeah, love that. And I love the ACP one too, that you were mentioning. Tracy Ann and I talk a lot about giving back and being part of the community and how much it means to your own career development. And as leaders, we're leaders of the world, not just leaders of the organization or the team that we lead. And this is a great way to give back and help veterans, get back into the civilian employment for everything that they've done for our country. So I really appreciate those additions, and we'll get that details from you and put it in the show notes for everyone so they can follow up on it. But I would want to encourage our listeners to think about those things and see how they can bring that into their organization or even just for themselves and give back. Love it. And now when we talk about you kind of mentioned it with basically create this community, give them the support that they need while also giving them the space that they need if they need a little time and whatever however they want to move forward. Is there anything else around how to create a supportive and inclusive environment for our veterans that we haven't covered yet?
As you look at those veterans and you start figuring out if they have unique needs that we haven't talked about, really working with them and potentially working with whatever employee assistance program, EAP program that you have within your company, which may actually be able to bring resources to them that you can't as a leader, right? So engaging in a way that you can help them get to the resource, but you're not going to actually be the resource because you're not an expert, right? So I think it's really help them get connected with experts where they need to get connected. I mean, the VA is pretty good at doing that as part of that transition process on the other side of the fence, outside of the company, but really inside, looking for what other opportunities, and they're available to all of the, all team members, but making sure that the veterans are aware of them too. And I think this way may sound to be a no-brainer, but really what does your company do from offering volunteer opportunities, right? So the veterans to volunteer in the community along with other team members so they can build an even stronger network amongst the team members. And maybe they decide that they're going to go volunteer in a specific veteran focused thing in their community, which again helps reinforce their connection to the company and the community, which is really a powerful thing as we, to your point, move forward in society and try to make the world a better place, not just the place we work, but our communities, our homes. And I think that one is another place where people can really think about what opportunities are out there for veterans to engage also.
Yeah, love that. And you said it's a no-brainer, but it's not. You don't think about those things sometimes, that it's good to hear these things as reminders of oh yeah, it is easier than you think. When you're thinking about what can I do to help this person feel part of the community and help others feel part of that community with that person too. So I love those ideas.
Depending on the rank and role of where you bring the person in to your organization, right? You may have other things that you would have thought the person would know, or even just I was pick your favorite senior ranking person in the military, so I know how to make people do things. It doesn't work that way necessarily in a company environment, right? So offering opportunities for coaching, internal coaching to help those, if they're brought into a leadership position, to really understand the leadership culture within a company and help them maybe sand off any rough edges that they may have coming in, or to enhance things that they already know and do well, right? So bringing coaching into the conversation, I think, is really important too.
I love that. And as a fellow coach, I'm always going to support that. So I love that one for sure. And I've seen a lot of help with doing that with people for sure. All right. So yep. I have some veterans. I brought them in. They're part of the organization. Now, as a leader, what can I do to help veterans with their career growth and development, and hopefully to retain them over the long term?
Well, I think this comes back around to, offering opportunity, right? And again, it's an opportunity that we should be offering all of our team members, right? Making sure that they have opportunities to, go to conferences, get educated on things that they should be working on in their career, understanding what resources are available to them, both internally and externally, because a lot of times the veteran may also show up with like, hey, I don't need your tuition assistance company X because I have the post 9/11 GI Bill and they're paying for me to go to school. So I'm going to school using that function, but even understanding what they're doing outside so that you can make a better place for them inside. And then, help them to understand that like there's no, don't be constrained by what they're doing today as far as what opportunities are available to them tomorrow, right? Like making sure that they understand what opportunities are available, what they can grow into, and then understanding what they want to grow into. Some folks might have been a leader and they don't want to be a leader anymore, right? Or they might not have been a leader and that's what they want to do, right? And really, kind of as we talked, like digging in and understanding what's motivating them. So if they are interested in leadership, why do you want to be a leader, right? Like, and really understanding, making sure that, like any leadership conversation, that we're doing it for the right reasons, right?
Yeah, I think that's great. And what a great point that you, as a leader, may say, look, we have all these great benefits, but those benefits might mean nothing to them because they have the benefits from donating their service and giving their service. So it's a really good point to think about that. And what are those long-term benefits that are actually really fruitful to a veteran that might not be as fruitful to other people and vice versa. So I love that piece.
Even things like healthcare. I'm retired. I don't need it.
Yeah.
Right. So like, oh, okay. I've already got coverage for that. So I don't need to take it from the company, or I do because the benefits are better through the company than they were through the TRICARE or whatever. So like just helping folks understand they have options, right?
Yeah. Really good points. Really good points. All right. There's that sound. That means it's time for our fun questions. Are you ready for our fun questions?
Ready as I'll ever be. Let them go.
All right. The first question is, what is your favorite sound?
So, it's kind of hokey, but like I have a 1.5-year-old golden retriever, and she makes this like little grunty sound when you rub her ears, and it's the cutest thing ever. So like that's my favorite sound.
I love that. That's awesome. That is definitely unique and love it. Absolutely. Okay.
Well, it either means she enjoys it or she hates it, but I pick that she enjoys it. So that like one of the two.
Well, is she trying to get away from you when you're doing it?
Nope.
Then I would say she enjoys it. All right. You ready for the second question?
I'm ready.
All right. What's the most unusual hobby you've ever tried or would like to try?
Most unusual hobby I've ever tried or would like to try. So I think it's not really that unusual, but the like to try is like I have all the gear to be a high-powered welder, but I have yet to weld anything. So like I'm ready, but I haven't done it.
Well,
so,
you're
like,
more than halfway there then if you got all the gear.
I got the gear. I got the cool like face shield. I've got all the cool things, but like I haven't tried to weld anything yet. So.
And do we have like a TIG welder? Are we starting? What are we doing? What are we starting with? Do you even know?
We're starting with a TIG welder.
All right.
Yeah,
all right.
yeah.
Good. Yeah. Good to start with the TIG welder. Awesome. All right. Well, hopefully the next time
nothing
we
super
talk.
fancy. Maybe. Or I burn my house down. Like I don't something.
No, don't say that. Don't say that. Well, Lance, thank you. Thank you for bringing this important topic to our episode. I know it's going to help our listeners. And to our leaders out there, please pause, take a moment, find out how you can support our veterans, how you can bring more veterans into your organization, and make sure that they thrive in the civilian world. Really appreciate all the time and all the advice that you've given, Lance. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Stacy. It's been a pleasure.
And that concludes another episode of Leadership Moments. We hope you found inspiration and valuable insights in what we shared today. Remember, leadership is not defined solely by titles or positions, but by the choices we make and the moments that shape us.
Embrace the challenges that come your way, for they may be the very moments that propel you toward greatness. We'd love to hear your thoughts and stories as well. Connect with us on our website at leadershipmomentspodcast.com or through social media on Instagram at Tracy_Ann Palmer.
And Stacy Castor _. Remember, your leadership moment could be just around the corner, waiting for you to seize it. This is Stacy Castor, and what doesn't challenge you won't change you.
And this is Tracy Ann Palmer. And be the change you wish to see in the world.